Picture a city built for 20,000 people, with almost no windows, no sunlight, and no way out except through 18 stories carved straight down into black volcanic rock. It's deeper than most modern skyscrapers are tall, and for almost 1,000 years, the world above completely forgot that it existed. In central Turkey, in the sun-baked region called Cappadocia, farmers walked over this ground for generations, never once suspecting what lay hidden beneath their feet. Then in 1963, a local man began renovating his house and knocked through a wall that felt strangely, stubbornly too solid to be natural. He couldn't have known it yet, but that single crack would eventually open onto tunnels, plunging more than 80 meters straight down into darkness. Behind that wall was only darkness. A narrow tunnel dropped away into the rock, and when he pushed through, he found a room. Then another, then a stairway going down. That stairway simply kept going and going. What he had stumbled into wasn't a cellar or a basement. It was the entrance to an entire hidden civilization underground. Archaeologists now call it Derinkuyu, meaning deep well in Turkish, and it may be the largest underground city ever carved entirely by human hands. 18 levels descend into the volcanic bedrock. Though only 8 are open to visitors today, the rest still being carefully mapped room by silent room. At its peak, this vertical maze could shelter as many as 20,000 people, along with their livestock, their grain stores, and everything needed to vanish completely. Think about that scale for a moment. 20,000 people is a small city, living for weeks at a time without ever once seeing the sun. Whole families squeezed through corridors so narrow that only one person could pass, bent almost double, carrying children and baskets of grain into the dark. Because none of this was built for comfort. Every inch of Derinkuyu was designed around one chilling purpose, staying hidden from something terrifying above ground. The rock here is called tuff, a soft volcanic stone that hardens once it meets open air, perfect for carving and perfect for keeping a secret. The first tunnels may date back to the Phrygians, around the 8th century BCE, simple pits dug to hide grain and valuables from passing raiders. Some researchers push the origins even further back, to the Hittites, around the 15th century BCE, hiding from enemies whose names history has since lost. But it was centuries later, under Byzantine Christians, that this city grew into something almost impossible to imagine in scale and sheer ambition. Between the 7th and 10th centuries, Arab armies swept repeatedly through Anatolia, and entire Christian communities simply disappeared underground until the danger finally passed. So they dug deeper. Homes became tunnels. Tunnels became stables, kitchens, wine presses, chapels, and schools, an entire underground world mirroring the one above it. There were rooms for pressing grapes into wine and olives into oil, their stone channels still grooved deep from centuries of constant, patient use. There were stables for cattle and sheep, tethered to iron rings still bolted into the rock, waiting out the danger quietly beside their owners. There was even a small church cut near the lowest levels, its cross-shaped ceiling carved from solid stone, for people who refused to stop praying underground. But surviving underground for weeks wasn't only about hiding well. 20,000 people need air to breathe, and that alone could have killed everyone instantly. The engineers solved it with over 50 ventilation shafts, some plunging 85 meters straight down, pulling fresh air steadily to every level below. Those same shafts doubled as wells, but with a brutal safeguard, they only opened on levels far below where any invader might actually reach them. That meant an enemy above couldn't poison the water and couldn't even find it at all, without first being trapped deep inside the maze itself. The deep rock also held a steady temperature near 13 degrees Celsius all year, cool enough to preserve grain and wine for months untouched. And if someone did manage to break in, the city had one more secret weapon waiting patiently in the dark, built specifically to stop them. Massive circular stone doors, some weighing over 500 kilograms, sat carved into the tunnel walls like giant millstones turned on their sides. From inside, families could roll one of these doors across a corridor in seconds, sealing the passage completely against whatever waited on the other side. There was no handle, no groove, nothing at all for outside hands to grip. Only the people hiding within could ever open their own door again. Some corridors were carved barely wide enough for one person to crouch through sideways, funneling any attacker into a single file, an easy target. Other passages simply led nowhere at all, dead ends carved deliberately to confuse any invader who somehow made it past the sealed stone doors, which meant a handful of defenders waiting quietly in the dark beside a stone door could hold off an army many times their own size. Every design choice here, the narrow paths, the hidden wells, the rolling doors, answers the very same question. Who exactly were they so afraid of? For Byzantine families, that fear had a name: raiding armies who burned villages and dragged survivors away into slavery across the open plains above. Going underground wasn't a desperate last resort. It became a rhythm of life, a survival ritual repeated for generations whenever riders appeared on the horizon. Some historians believe entire families could vanish underground within hours, taking their households, herds, and harvests down into the safety of the rock. And Derinkuyu wasn't even alone down there. A tunnel over 8 kilometers long is believed to connect it to Cappadocia, another underground city nearby. How long could families actually last down there? Long enough. Grain, wine, livestock, even breathable air, all engineered carefully to outlast any siege. Some chambers held rock-cut kitchens with smoke channels twisting upward and sideways, so no telltale plume of smoke ever betrayed the hidden refuge above. Even something as ordinary as cooking fire had to be hidden and disguised, because a single wisp of smoke could mean discovery, and discovery could mean death. Eventually, the worst raids stopped, and as danger above ground slowly eased, fewer people needed the deepest levels, which slipped gradually out of living memory. Local villagers had always sensed something strange beneath their homes, cellars that ran oddly deep, though no one ever recorded quite how far. Entrances were sealed behind house walls, mistaken for simple storage cellars, until an entire underground city faded quietly into local folklore, not fact. For nearly 1,000 years, Derinkuyu simply waited in silence and darkness, its stone doors standing open to absolutely no one at all. Until that one wall finally came down in 1963, and a forgotten world of 20,000 ghosts, wine presses, and stone doors saw light again. Since then, archaeologists have mapped only a fraction of the full complex. Deeper tunnels remain sealed off, unexplored, and quite possibly still unsafe today. Which means the true extent of Derinkuyu, how deep it truly goes, and what still waits in its lowest chambers, remains genuinely, entirely unknown. It's strange to think that so much human ingenuity was born purely from fear, from the simple need to disappear when the world above turned violent. A stone door with no outside handle is such a small detail, but it tells you everything about just how afraid these people truly were. Derinkuyu wasn't built to conquer anyone or to impress anyone. It was built so an entire community could vanish completely and simply survive one more day. Maybe that's the real lesson buried under Cappadocia. When the surface world turned dangerous enough, An entire people simply dug down until they disappeared. If forgotten cities and lost civilizations like this one pull you in, subscribe because far stranger ones are still waiting, buried and silent underground.